Brother Kevin is South Central, or just Central, I guess you might say, Texas. We ran the boys down to camp this week, vacation. But let's begin with prayer. We will bow it. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time we have to be together and be encouraged and strengthened from your word. We pray that you'll grant to us an open, willing, and focused mind that will be able to ascertain lessons from your word, that will be able to grow as we should. Pray that you will help us as we seek to be an example for others day to day. We pray that you will help us to be the kind of servant you would have us to be each day. We ask these things in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. All right, in Nehemiah 13, I started putting the lesson together. I thought, well, I'll just look at Nehemiah as a reformer. And that's just, I guess, going to be kind of a side note of what the lesson just kind of turned into a textual whole chapter lesson. And we'll see how far we can make it in this hour. So Nehemiah 13, I'll read verses 1 to 3, and then we'll have some discussion. On that day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that the Ammonite and the Moabite should not come into the congregation of God forever, because they met not the children of Israel with bread and with water, but hired Balaam against them, that he should curse them. However, or howbeit, our God turned the curse into a blessing. Now it came to pass, when they had heard the law, that they separated from Israel all the mixed multitude. So they read a portion of the law and took some action. Now, the first question on here, under the question sheet, under verses 1 to 3, is, what is hermeneutics? And I ask that question because how do they know this applied to them? How do they know to do what they did? And I hope you don't answer because Nehemiah told them to. But really, how did they know? They reasoned. All right, they reasoned with what God had provided in, we might say, revelation to them. Reason from the Scriptures. What did they reason? They reasoned, oh, I'm an Israelite. We are Israelites. Israelites should not have the Moabites and the Ammonites mixed in, right? Into the congregation. And how do they even know what the congregation was? They might have understood from context of what had been read, but certainly I believe they could associate the right idea with the word, the assembly. And this assembly, as they would come together, would be for worship many times. Any other thoughts or ideas about that? I have on here, perhaps it was Deuteronomy 23, 3 through 5, on my sheet here, that they had read from. It says, Ammonite and Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever, because they met you not with bread and water in the way. And as you came forth, or when you came forth out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, of Pethor, of Mesopotamia, to curse you. And nevertheless, the Lord God would not hearken unto Balaam, but the Lord turned the curse into the blessing, because the Lord loved you. Okay, let's talk about the rest of verses 1 to 3 and what actually Deuteronomy 23 says as well. Who was Balaam? What did he do? Balaam was, the prophet, and he was hired to do this cursing from, who hired him? King of Moab, named, also begins with B. Balak. And Balak hired Balaam to do this cursing because he knew of this great multitude that has come out of Egypt and would go. I think they actually asked if they could pass through the land, and they were being denied passage. Certainly not with the hospitality that could have come from near kinsmen, because you remember who the Moabites and the Ammonites came from. Who was it? Abraham's cousin or nephew, I think one version puts it, Lot. Okay? So we have these near kinsmen that are not helping out over the period of these several generations. They're Israelite kin. They are turning them away, and they're actually wanting to have them cursed. The leader, the king, is wanting to have them cursed. But Balaam, despite his good intentions, ends up with, we had a learning to serve about this not that long ago, and the kids learned about the talking donkey. And they understood that it was to keep Balaam from doing something that he wasn't supposed to do. So Balaam, all the times proclaiming that he would not say more or less than what God told him to say, was nevertheless hired to curse the Israelites, and he did bless them the 3 times altogether. Now, hermeneutics is the study of interpretation, by the way, and it is the science or the study of interpretation that allows people to understand what has been written or what has been sent in the way of a message. And it even applies to scriptures. There are rules for interpreting what has been written. You don't interpret the book of Revelation the same way you interpret the book of Genesis. There is a narrative record, largely not figurative, no more figurative than normal anyway in the book of Genesis. And in the book of Revelation you have highly figurative language being used. In the next few verses then, in Nehemiah 13, it says that Eliashib, the priest, having the oversight of the chamber of the house of our God, was allied with, or unto Tobiah, and he had prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime they laid the meat offerings, and frankincense, and vessels, and tithes of the corn, and new wine, and oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the offerings of the priests. But in all this time was not, I'll go ahead and stop there. So there was this chamber. There has been new construction going on in Jerusalem, wall completed, the foundation of the temple laid. Finally, there's other work that's done, and there's construction done on the temple itself, and they have prepared within this structure a chamber. Verse 4. And it's appointed for a reason. It's to serve a purpose, and we find out that things are not going quite the way that they should. Aforetime, originally it says, verse 5, there was this as a storehouse, if you will, or a staging place. And the tithes were given to who? Tithes were for the support and the sustenance of the Levites, because they had no physical inheritance. Well, the tithe was their inheritance, if you will. I think that's the way to put it. And the singers and the porters and the offerings of the priests, all there in the storeroom. It's for staging, and those things that could be distributed, needed to be distributed, were to be passed down. But we find this has not happened the way it should. And Elisha is allied unto Tobiah, verse 4. And who was Tobiah, according to earlier record in the book here?
A servant of Sanballat.
Servant of Sanballat? I say Sanballat, you say Sanballat. Tomato. So the early record in the book talks about Tobiah and Sanballat, and they were those that opposed the work that Nehemiah had set out to do, according to the injunction he had from the king. Come back and rebuild the walls of the temple. What else do we understand about this individual and his contrariness to the work that was going on? He was vocal, wasn't he? But here they've made some progress, and, well, he's going to join up with them. And we'll find that there's other problems that are existing, keeping other obstacles, if you will, keeping progress from happening the way it should in the restoration of things the way they ought to be. So the question number 3 is, who was Tobiah? We answered that. He was alive with and Elisha, verse 4, and he was also affiliated with other enemies of the Israelites, Sanballat among them. And number 4, who were some New Testament Levites. And by that I mean people mentioned in the New Testament who were definitely Levites, or we think were Levites. Okay? Priests. What tribe was John the Baptist, for instance? His father was Zechariah, and Zechariah was ministering, wasn't he? And to do that, he had to be a Levite before the Lord when the vision came to him. Any other ideas? Other New Testament Levites? Maybe the Apostle Matthew, whose surname was Levi? Maybe. Don't know that, but maybe. Okay. Nehemiah 13, verses 6 to 7 then. We'll continue on. It says, "And all this time was not I at Jerusalem, but in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, came I unto the king, and after certain days obtained I leave of the king." So these things have been going on without Nehemiah present. Verse 7, "I came to Jerusalem, and I understood of the evil that Elisha did for Tobiah, in preparing him a chamber in the courts of the house of God." So aforetime, I don't know if that meant in the former days of the existence of the former temple, but aforetime this chamber was for a purpose, but now it is set up for the use of Tobiah. And he has claimed this chamber in the courts of the house of God. Any thoughts about this? The questions about those verses, number 5 and number 6. Verse 7 says the chamber was prepared for Tobiah. What color does this give the alliance? Of course, understanding who Tobiah was gives it a color already, but I've got 1 Corinthians 15.
Was he a priest, Tobiah?
No, Tobiah was, my understanding, not even an Israelite.
Okay, yeah. Just somebody they put in there.
Definitely opposed to the word, yeah. But I could be wrong about that. That's my understanding. What the color of the alliance, I was thinking about 1 Corinthians 15:33. What is it as a component in, as an obstacle or as an expedient for the progress and the work of restoration that Nehemiah did? It's something he labels it evil, doesn't it? And the fact that Tobiah has this chamber now. So question 6, highly responsible. Nehemiah was upset. Elisha oversaw wickedly. And the question is this righteous indignation? It could have been, certainly. It makes sense that it was. And we understand that Nehemiah took action that pretty much demonstrates that we're righteous indignation. All that he was able to do and accomplish was good for the Lord, and this is what he prayed about unto the Lord. Remember me for the good that I have done, or the good that was done at his hand. So verses 8 and 9 of Nehemiah 13 says, "It grieved me sore. Therefore I cast forth all of the household stuff of Tobiah out of the chamber. And I commanded, and they cleansed the chambers. And thither brought I again the vessels of the house of God, with the meat offering and the frankincense." Yeah. And needed for things to be happening the way they ought to. And we'll read here in the next few verses that the Levites had not been given the tithes, verse 10, and had fled every man to his field. Well, this was the state of things. This is the way things were digressing from the way they ought to be. So in verse 7, despite brief over the situation, Nehemiah took action to resolve it. Not really a question, just a statement there, but are there any thoughts about that? Well, we can't be presumptuous ourselves as individuals nowadays, but certainly those that have authority, elders, within the church need to be willing to take action against things that are amiss. And of course those things have instruction about how they are to be handled in the Word of God in the New Testament also. In verse 9 it says, I commanded and they cleansed the chambers. And verse 9 is mentioned in question 8. It sheds some light on the original purpose of the chamber, or at least a better way to utilize it. They have looked back to maybe even the original layout of the temple to understand that before time this temple, the chamber, was for this reason, for this purpose. And it served a function. And it was not to be anyone's household chambers, but they had to cast forth, bring forth the household stuff and then cleanse the chambers. What did the law of Moses, and I had to look this up, but what did the law of Moses say about cleansing or making things clean again in living quarters? You remember it said some things about the house in which leprosy had been, and cleansing those domiciles sometimes. But the cleansing, as I understand it, was pretty thorough. And I don't think that would have left anything to chance as it came to the temple itself.
The key is that God instructed. God did give instruction. Didn't leave man to his own doing.
Especially if it came to something that man didn't understand, and that day and time, like disease. But exactly.
Here we see Nehemiah very much of his mindset as a restorer. His restoration principles are at work here. He's bringing things back to their original order.
Right. And this pattern mentality, as he has looked back and as things have been put back in place, of course the glory, the grandeur perhaps is not there of the temple that has been built or would be built to its completion, but as we recall that people wept when they just saw the foundation laid. But nevertheless, it would serve the purpose, and it was going back to that very thing, to serve the purpose. So in verses 10 and 11, the Levites, as we already mentioned, had not been given the tithes and portions. Levites and singers did the work, but fled everyone to his field, and I contended with the rulers and said, why is the house of God forsaken? And I gathered them together and set them in their place. Who does he talk about? He set in their place. Okay. Those that needed to be doing the ministering, right? The Levites, singers, porters, all of those that had been mentioned that should have been receiving of the sustenance and the tithe. They are in their place and they're doing their work, and they're then to be receiving of the tithe. And this is what takes place in verses 12 and 13. The tithe is brought in, the tithe is distributed. They brought all Judah brought in the tithe of corn and new wine and oil unto the treasuries. And verse 13 says that I made treasurers over the treasuries Shelemiah the priest and Zadok the scribe, and of the Levites Pedaiah, and next to them was Hanan the son of Zaccur and the son of Mattaniah, for they were counted faithful, and their office was to distribute unto their brethren. And the question is here, How would the tithe have been misappropriated if reforms had not been made? Assuming there were faithful in Israel, faithful in Judah in this case, that would bring the tithe, what would happen to that tithe if Nehemiah had not done what he's done? I guess Tobiah would just have to say what happened to it with him, instead of God having to say what happened to it. So verse 12, faithful treasurers, number 12, question number 12, faithful treasurers over treasuries could be trusted to distribute to whom? Their brethren, the other priests, the other Levites, the singers and porters. And then we get to verse number 14 through 16. And Nehemiah has one of these interruptions to his narrative, but he has his prayer. He says, "Remember me, O my God, concerning this. Wipe not out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God, and for the offices thereof." And is he asking for personal glory when he asks this? No. What is he asking for? Remember me, O my God. Okay, that's a great way to look at it. He's not asking that he's part of any merit system, is he? He's not asking that he be, make sure it's on my side of the scale this time, God. No, he's saying, remember me meekly. And the sermon this morning will be about meekness. He's saying, remember me, O my God, concerning this, that the good that has been done, the good deeds that have been done, happens to be what he has done. He's familiar with it, so he's praying about it. For the house of my God, and for the offices of it, these things would be able to continue, right? Wipe it not out. Does God have control over things being wiped out and things being forgotten? Certainly he does. He has control to be able to say, this will be blotted out, and he has control to be able to say, these words will do what I set them to accomplish, doesn't he?
This remembrance, not just in Judgment Day remembrance, but also remembrance in God's providence of caring for him in his life and in his service. Maybe in his next time of absence, that things like this not happen in his next time of absence, for the providence of God to somehow deter these things in his absence.
That's a good perspective also, considering what you just said about him being gone and these things that happened and how he's having to deal with them. That's a good perspective to look at that also.
So, study is something we need to get into, because the reason they're in the streets in the first place, they've been in exile and they've been gone a long time, and they haven't kept up with what they haven't recalled to their children and so forth. They really don't know a lot about what they're supposed to be doing. So Nehemiah has a advantage.
Right. I agree totally. That we have this generation here that's coming back from exile, and some things that could not have been kept up with in exile and captivity. Now that they're restoring them, they have to be refamiliarized, taught. There's a learning curve going on. And so we have the reading of the law in verse 1. That's an eye-opener for a lot of folks. And they begin to make a reform. Another reform. And a series of reforms. And so the good that is being done that Nehemiah refers to is it's a gradual thing. It's a step-by-step process. It's a constant evaluation of the way things ought to be versus the way things are. And every individual convert, every individual Christian has to examine himself in such a fashion. Good point. We all pay attention to the principles laid out in passages like this about the restoration of God's people and all the things that they would do to bring back the worship the way it needed to be, and their service to God the way it needed to be.
The word instructs to study and show ourselves approved. So this could be a lesson for us to continue to study to keep God's word.
That's right. Things written aforetime, written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. Romans 15:4. We are to rightly divide the word, 2 Timothy 3. We are to study to show ourselves approved, 2 Timothy 2. We are commissioned with having a knowledge and growing in knowledge and grace, 2 Peter 3, verse 18. We familiarize ourselves with these things and look to the admonitions of the Old Testament, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and try to grow in this in the way that God would intend for us all along. So in verses 14 to 16, as Nehemiah begins this, he says, remember me. And then verse 15, he says, in those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses. This goes on to another subject. The treading of the wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and lading asses, and also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. And verse 16, where there dwelt men of Tyre also therein, and brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. The question about these few verses is, what is the earliest penalty for one who profaned the Sabbath? You recall what was done and what was done to him? Likely stone. I believe so. They were put to death anyway. We have the record after the law was given. The Israelites are told to remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, and that explanation was there, even in the Ten Commandments, for the Lord made the heaven and earth, all that's in them, in 6 days, and the seventh day He did rest. This is why you remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And we just had a great lesson last Sunday about memorials. Sabbath is a great memorial of God's creation. But there was one that gathered sticks on the Sabbath day. And when that happened, there was sin then in the camp, so to speak. And it had to be dealt with. And he was put to death. Any thoughts or comments about that? So this is a serious matter, and Nehemiah takes it seriously. He seeks to bring more reforms back to the way things ought to be according to the Scriptures. Remember, keep, observe. This is question number 14. And keep holy, applied to the Sabbath how? What was it that you were supposed to do when you remembered the Sabbath and kept it holy? No work. All right, you didn't do the things that were being done, right? And you didn't work. That was the specification. You don't do the servile work, as mentioned many times, on that day. What was the significance? We just talked about why. You keep it holy. Why? God rested on the seventh day. It reminded the Israelites, week by week, of the fact that God created the heavens and the earth, all that was in them. Which is a great thing to be reminded of. We all do well to be reminded of it. But in verses 17 to 22, continue on, it says, I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said to them, what evil thing is it that you do, and profane the Sabbath day? Here is Nehemiah calling it what it is again, evil. Verse 18, did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us, and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. It came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that there should be no burden brought in on the Sabbath day. And the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said unto them, Why lodge ye about the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth, they came no more, or came they no more on the Sabbath. It is interesting to read about the way Nehemiah deals with problems. He just goes right into it and deals with these things. Huh?
I like Nehemiah.
Well, we can certainly respect what he did as a servant of God, and he is a great example for those that will be leaders. We all need to be leaders to some extent. In Nehemiah 13, verses 17 to 22, as Nehemiah will deal with the problems of the Sabbath day, he looks back, doesn't he? And he's talking to who? When he says, Did not your fathers thus? The nobles of Judah, verse 17. The nobles of Judah that ought to know better, maybe. But they're on this learning curve. Maybe they've just been tempted. They're doing something that they know they ought not to be doing. But whatever the case, Nehemiah is plain about saying this should not be done. And he looks to history. And the prophets have been vocal about a lot of the problems of the past, haven't they? They had the records of the prophets. Things that Isaiah had said, things that other prophets had said, they had these things and were to have been paying attention if they would come back and be in favor with God. So the wrath, he says, is coming if we don't fix this. And in this capacity, he is functioning as, yet again, another prophet, so to speak. He is forth-telling the will of God. The will of God is that he's going to bring wrath against those that will not hearken to him, right? Afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. This is certainly what Nehemiah is doing. They've gotten into Jerusalem and they've gotten a little comfortable. And they've rubbed elbows with Sanballat, Tobiah, and so forth. And now things are not going the way they need to. They've fixed a couple of things and they're going to have to keep fixing things. And it's not going to be in favor with everybody, but those that would be in favor with God are going to have to hearken. They're going to have to do these things. It would bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. In verse 19 it says, It came to pass when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark. Well, I made this point in question number 15. When the Jewish day began at sunset, the Sabbath was half over. At sunrise, more or less, wasn't it? Think about it. And the walls and gates were able to serve a good purpose then for holiness and righteousness. I asked the question in light of current events, I guess, was or were these gates and walls immoral? Well, they were. They served a good purpose. And in this case, to keep the merchants out, because they had no business there. They shouldn't have been conducting business on the Sabbath day. They should have been influencing those inside the city to be conducting such business. Any comments? Okay. Question number 16. Again, Nehemiah interrupts the narrative with a plea that God remember him for the good that was both intended and accomplished. Did this mean, as we've already mentioned, that Nehemiah believed works of merit? No, it didn't. Nehemiah believed things being the way they ought to be. This is what he worked for. He knew God's expectations were strict and they were serious matters. Any comments? All right. We'll look at the last passage in verses 23 to 31. Nehemiah 13, verses 23 to 31, kind of longer. It says, In those days also saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod and Ammon and Moab, and their children spake half the language of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, Ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your sons, or for yourselves. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin by these things? Yet among many nations was there no king like him, who was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, even him did outlandish women cause to sin. Shall we then hearken unto you to do all this great evil, to transgress against our God in marrying strange wives? And one of the sons of Joiada, the son of Elisha the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat the Horonite. Therefore I chased him from me. Remember them, O my God, because they have defiled the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and of the Levites. Thus cleansed I them from all strangers, and appointed the wards of the priests and the Levites, every one in his business. And for the wood offering at times appointed for the first fruits. Remember me, O my God, for good. So in discussing this passage here, the Jews had married wives of Ashdod. Where was Ashdod? On the map? Philistine lands. And Philistine was by the coast. Coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Ashdod was over there, one of their principal cities. But then also he mentions, verse 23, Ammon and Moab. The wives had come from these places and had been brought to live among the Israelites. Was there anything specifically wrong with this? Let me ask that question. What had God commanded in the law about foreign wives? All right? Weren't supposed to do that. Did he say what? All right. And the Israelites, even from early on, could look back to Jacob. Jacob married who? Leah and Rachel. Now, what was it that Rachel was sitting on when they were overtaken? The idols had been taken. She was sitting on those idols. She didn't want to be discovered. She wanted them to make the trip with her. And that was the kind of thing that God was trying to prevent. The women would bring in the idols with them. And this was the very thing that happened with Solomon, wasn't it? As is recorded very well in no uncertain terms. There's the record of, was it 1 Kings? Yeah. 1 Kings. So we have this being talked about to the children, or the Jews rather, in Judah. And their children are being talked about in verse 24 that some of them spoke the speech of Ashdod, whatever the Philistines spoke. Some of them spoke the language of Ammon and Moab, but they could not speak the Jews' language, what we would know as Hebrew. And so when the law was read, what could they understand? Nothing. And they had grown up in the midst of the people. The law was read. What could they understand? Not much. I contended with them, verse 25, Nehemiah says, and cursed them. What do we think he means by that? He writes this out and says that he cursed them. It sounds rather unloving. Yes, he plucked out their hair.
By the word cursing them, he pointed out the curses that God had pronounced upon them.
Okay, they were already cursed. But
God cursed upon them.
yeah, he needed to let them know, didn't he, that this was impending judgment of God. This curse would come upon them if they didn't do something about it. And that is, of course, the essence of warning based on what God messages. Yes, sir.
You know, a lot of the problems that were happening back then are similar to the problems we're having.
Sure. And if we remain silent when there is something wrong, and genuinely wrong, and someone is going to go to hell if something isn't done, we're implicated. And we need to address things.
John the Baptizer in Mark chapter 6 told Herod it was not lawful for thee to have her.
All right, plain speech. It is not lawful for thee to have her. Spoken to a king. And eventually resulted in John losing his head. All right. Contention, verse 25. Person, smote certain of them. There was a physical altercation, it looks like. Plucked off the hair and made them swear by God, saying, "Ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons." I could just imagine, and this is kind of an aside, but I can just imagine the servants that Nehemiah brought back with him. They were helping to guard the gates of the city, and these would kind of be enforcers, if you will, if you think about them. The people that would back him up. But no, God was behind the things that Nehemiah would do providentially. And God was allowing the people to see through the work that was being done with the priests, even for the Levites, the setting up of the temple. All of it was for the people to see and understand God was in control and taking care of them, doing just what he said he would do before he ever took them into captivity. He would bring them back and plant them, and they would serve the purpose of bringing the Messiah into the world over the course of several generations. Any comments? Yes, sir.
Early in the Israelites' history, God had often disciplined them personally himself, like as with Nadab and Abihu. But now they have matured to the point that God expected discipline among their people. Nehemiah is carrying out God's discipline rather than God sending a lightning bolt from heaven to deal with Tobiah or something like that. God's people were expected to discipline themselves, and today, still, he expects God's people to discipline themselves.
With regard to what I've mentioned before, a learning curve and things being brought to the way they ought to be, and we can see God operating that way in a lot of situations, and then altogether more abruptly in others, with things being dealt with the way that God saw fit to deal with them. I'm trying to think where to go from here. There's several different ways to look at this, but the understanding that in the New Testament, God saw fit through the utilization of preaching, finally, that the gospel would be carried forth and brought to men. It's altogether fascinating to me that we have, in Luke chapter 2, angels being used to proclaim the glad tidings, because they're not used much anymore in that direct fashion. They're used to maybe bring messages to saints and the book of Acts, but other than that record, we're not given much. Well, I guess that's the second part. I appreciate the comments.